Welcome to Practical Privacy. Today we're going to look at the challenge of completing your privacy documentation, ROPAs, etc. for the entire organization in a timely manner. And today I have Aaron Mendelsohn, Director and Senior Privacy Officer with the LEGO Group. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, Orla.
So this is obviously a conversation I've had again and again, but maybe tell us a little bit more about your particular challenge.
Sure. So in one of the organizations that I've worked in, we were tasked with trying to reestablish our baseline privacy documentation. There was existing documentation and really wasn't fit for purpose anymore. It was established around GDPR period, and we had to figure out a way to redo pretty much all of our data protection and privacy documentation. This was our ROPAs, but also included where we were relying on legitimate interest assessments, where there was higher risk processing, doing the PIAs, and we needed to do this across several hundred digital product teams and incorporating over 1,000 unique applications. And we needed to figure out how to do this fast within a 12-month calendar year, and needed to do this in a way that created a mechanism so that teams that only had lower risk processing or didn't have any real data protection impacts, so no personal data really within their applications, could just sort of circumvent the entire process. And those that did have the higher risk processing had to do the more complete documentation. So when we set out to do this, we wanted to use a tool. We knew that would be one of the big benefits of doing this was, or one of the requirements of doing this to get the benefit we needed was to find a tool. But one of the other challenges was also, how do we enable the teams to do this right? In my previous life, I worked in corporate IT, where change management and enablement was always a big component of sort of the go-to-market, go-to-live within a new system. So relying on a new system, we decided we had to go and train and enable each of our digital product teams, which was largely composed of a product manager, but also engineers, to understand why is it that we had to do this, and why is it important, and how would we what was the expectation on them to complete their documentation. And so we started really with a small team of products and said, all right, let's test this out. Let's do sort of a proof of concept, but let's do enablement sessions. Let's train them. Let's spend 3 hours with them, telling them why this is important, explaining the narrative. Why are we doing this? What does this mean to them? What is the expectation on them? Then training them in the new tool. So spending about 45 minutes to an hour doing an actual real application that they own and showing them, all right, this is how it works. If it's higher risk, here's what's expected of you. If it's lower risk, here's how you can sort of just short circuit the entire documentation and just confirm that you have low risk processing. But oftentimes, I think those types of enablement, the change management exercise, the communication that we as privacy leaders or professionals do within the work we do is kind of forgotten. And you sometimes have we have a tendency, all right, if we build it, they will come kind of mentality. If we put it out there, we put an update on a SharePoint site or an internal communication mechanism, they'll just figure it out. This is a requirement, go figure it out. But I felt very strongly that given the culture of the organization and the change that we were asking these teams to go about doing, we needed to do those enablement sessions. So over the course of 12 months, we went to every single product team. Again, this was several hundred, and showed them what was expected of them and asked them to go and complete that work. And over that course of those 12 months, we were able to get over 1,000 applications documented to a reasonable level of specificity. I think that's important too, is sometimes teams will just go and say, all right, I'm going to do my documentation. I'm going to do the bare minimum, and we'll check the box. But we really wanted good information and, junk in, junk out. So we try to work with them, show them why this was important and how to get it done. And that we could, in the privacy office, could have the value of that information being well documented.
Okay, and was this successful from the get-go, or were there strategies that you tried that were not quite as successful?
I would say it was reasonably successful from the get-go. We started small, so we started with only, again, several hundred teams. We only started with a handful to kind of prove out our approach. We got really good feedback, but we didn't scale all at once. So started small, kind of used a pilot proof of concept model that seemed to be working. Then we tweaked it a little bit, and didn't for a broader audience. We did get some feedback, and then we went kind of full bore from then on. And again, we didn't try to do all of them at once. We would try to prioritize what we saw as the higher risk product teams, those that we knew had personal data. Obviously, HR teams is a good example. We know that they're processing our employee personal data, so they were in the initial in one of the initial use cases. And then we try to scale across the rest of the organization, moving to the lower risk product teams towards the end, knowing that they wouldn't have a whole lot to do. But yeah, I think we did get it done relatively quickly. Working with our third party service provider, the partner that enabled the system, they said that they hadn't seen a team kind of approach it in this way, especially with a smaller core product team or project team that was pushing this work effort. But we were able to get it all done with not a whole lot of people across an entire organization. But I feel very strongly the reason we were able to do it was the enablement, investing in those change management sessions, the teaching sessions, explaining to the teams why this was important. It hadn't really been done in the organization in that way, but having kind of grown up in that legacy corporate IT organization, I think that was how I saw projects be successful. So
Yeah. I suppose it's more about ownership. It's them understanding the why they're doing it as opposed to just I'm doing because I'm told to.
yeah, I think that's part of it too. And they could see, all right, well, once I know my data, I know my product has at least is on the start of the compliant journey. It might not mean that they're 100% compliant, but it means that they understand their risk and that they could share that with the rest of the organization as well.
Yeah. So if you were to go back again, what would you do differently?
Um, I would probably try to build maybe more. And this might sound a little counterintuitive, but could we build additional processes into this? So we really focused at the time on privacy documentation, ROPAs, legitimate interest assessments, to PIAs. Could we build additional compliance assessments in there? And I think the answer is yes, and that's what we're trying to do in maybe future versions within the organization, is to try to say, all right, what else can we do to try to capture, is it AI risk assessments, online safety assessments? How do you build more compliance into these types of processes? Because oftentimes what we see is product teams are overloaded with compliance obligations. They hear it from privacy, they hear it from legal, they hear it from digital security or cybersecurity, they hear it from other compliance or governance and risk teams. So how can you build more into a single process or workflow that supports larger compliance objectives?
Okay. Excellent. So one piece of advice that you would potentially offer your peers.
Um, don't be afraid to meet your, I guess, internal customers where they are. Don't get out from behind your privacy office desk, so to say, and meet your teams where they are. Where privacy is not, we're kind of an add-on oftentimes within the project management workflow, the development workflow, whatever it may be. So our objective is not to change the way they work. Our objective should be to enable their work in a compliant manner. And so how do you do that? And I think you do that by understanding how these teams, how your internal customers, clients, development teams work. And you can't do that sitting behind a desk. And I know a lot of privacy teams work in distributed work environments, but feel very strongly, go meet your teams if you can. If it's a virtual session, fine. I think it's even better if you can go see where they work, if they work in a physical environment, where they're working, and understand that. At the end of the day, relationships matter. We need to be able to support our internal teams, and building those relationships will allow you to do that later on. So even though that exercise that we did seemed to be very specific to a workflow, what we were able to see in terms of a residual benefit is now they know who you are. So if they do have that question, they understand there's risk there. They will reach out to you proactively because they remember, oh, Aaron from the privacy office met us 3 years ago and talked about why this was important. Now we're doing something new. Maybe we should go talk to him again. And so get out from behind your desk, build those relationships, meet the teams where they are. Don't try to change their ways of working fundamentally. Try to figure out how to build into their processes so that you can get the benefit you need to in terms of compliant products or compliance systems.
I think that's a great piece of advice for any privacy team. So that's it. Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Orla, for having me.
My pleasure. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe and share. Until next time.